Imagine ghost ships quietly slipping through a global naval blockade while the entire global oil market just holds its breath. Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We are breaking down a high-stakes geopolitical countdown that is unfolding at this very second, as the world braces for Friday's monumental US-Iran summit. To understand the scale of this, think about the number 3.8 million. That is the staggering amount of Iranian crude oil, in barrels, that literally just broke through a U.S. naval blockade today. Carried by two supertankers, this massive movement instantly set off alarms across global waters. It's a very bold, physical test of a diplomatic promise that hasn't even been officially signed yet.
So, let's jump right into Section 1, the Friday deadline and the U.S.-Iran agreement.
Here's the ticking clock we're all up against. The world is waiting on a highly anticipated memorandum of understanding, which is scheduled to be signed this Friday at Switzerland's Bergenstock Resort. This impending agreement triggers a strict 60-day window. The main goals here? Extend a fragile ceasefire, reopen the crucial Strait of Hormuz to shipping, and kickstart incredibly complex nuclear negotiations. Which brings us to Section 2, phantom ships and blockades, or, honestly, just chaos in the waters. Because before the ink is even dry in Switzerland, rogue variables are throwing global shipping lanes into absolute confusion. It's been a dizzying diplomatic whiplash over just 4 days. On Sunday, President Trump announces the deal and an immediate blockade removal. But then Monday, a multilateral naval command contradicts him, saying no, the blockade remains. Tuesday rolls around, and an Iranian diplomat insists the blockade is gone. And by Wednesday, sanctioned ships actually physically cross the line. Just in the last 24 hours alone, 5 sanctioned Iranian ships, we're talking crude oil tankers and a massive container ship, made their move. They departed the southern Iranian port of Chabahar, deliberately transited the heavily contested U.S. naval blockade area, and are now heading east, right into the Gulf of Oman. You see, this isn't theoretical diplomacy anymore. It's thousands of tons of steel moving through a war zone. Adding to this suspense here, it's not just visible ships making moves. One sanctioned tanker, named the Stream, actually killed its location broadcast overnight as it approached from Karachi. It's operating as a literal phantom ship in a highly volatile zone. Meanwhile, 2 other tankers are tracking straight for the blockade area from Pakistan. It's a high-stakes game of maritime chicken. But despite a few rogue ships pushing forward, the broader commercial shipping industry, they're terrified. To put it in perspective, commercial traffic through the vital Strait of Hormuz has plummeted from a daily historic average of about 135 vessels all the way down to mere single digits. The entire global supply chain has effectively slammed on the brakes, waiting to see if Friday's deal is actually real. Let's look at what this means financially in Section 3, Oil Markets React, covering prices and optimism. All this geopolitical whiplash is slamming directly into the global economy. $78.19. That was the price per barrel of Brent crude early Wednesday. This represents the market stabilizing after a massive 5% drop on Tuesday. And the trigger for that drop? It was pure market optimism over the impending peace deal and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Financial markets are reacting to reports that the U.S. will allow Iran to immediately resume selling oil and fuel under this new deal. Sanctions on oil sales are reportedly set to be waived the exact second the Friday signing is complete. So for oil traders, the sudden prospect of millions of Iranian barrels flooding back into the global market is what's driving those prices down. But in stark contrast to Wall Street's optimism, major international shipping associations are definitely sounding the alarm. Jakob Larsen from BIMCO warns that without concrete security guarantees, the reality on the water remains incredibly dangerous. Traders might be buying and selling on hope, but ship captains, they aren't willing to risk their crew's lives on overly optimistic reassurances just yet. Now we have to factor in Section 4, the Lebanon wildcard, and the military complications tying this all up. Because here is the primary military threat that could derail this entire agreement. Despite the impending Friday deal, Israeli forces have continued a campaign of limited military actions. They've actively launched airstrikes and drone strikes targeting specific areas in southern Lebanon, including Nabatea, El Fuqa, and Ansariyeh. Naturally, this creates an immediate, highly combustible diplomatic crisis. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has explicitly stated that Israel's strikes and its continued troop presence in Lebanon directly violate the very terms set to be signed on Friday. The deal isn't even finalized, and red lines are already being debated. So we're seeing deeply conflicting perspectives emerge from the leaders involved. President Trump, the architect of this impending deal, has openly criticized Israel's handling of the conflict in Lebanon ahead of the summit. He's called the recent strikes vicious and too much, showing real frustration over how this military action is complicating his diplomatic efforts. Meanwhile, Israeli officials are pushing back hard. Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir firmly stated, "Trump's agreement does not bind us. Israel insists their troops will remain in the section of southern Lebanon they occupy, regardless of whatever Washington and Tehran sign in Switzerland." This presents a massive structural roadblock. Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, Fragile Diplomacy and the Path Forward. We are sprinting toward a diplomatic deadline paved with economic optimism, but rigged with explosive military tripwires. And this sentiment from U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham captures the mood in Washington perfectly. He's highly skeptical, yet views this 60-day window as a necessary diplomatic gamble that's just worth trying. Which leaves us with one final burning question as the clock runs out. With phantom tankers already testing the waters, the shipping industry completely paralyzed by fear, and strikes continuing in Lebanon, will Friday's summit actually bring peace? Or will these wildcards simply ignite a new phase of conflict before the ink is even dry? Keep your eyes on the Strait of Hormuz. Thanks for joining today's Explainer.